Hello, my name's Simon and you're in the right place. Don't worry. I know there's a piano here and it doesn't look like this is a course on OBS Studio, but I guarantee this is the right place. The reason I'm in this position is because I live stream piano, mostly weekly, and this is my setup for live streaming. And so I thought this is a fine place to do a brief introduction to the OBS Studio course. So in my live stream I have this environment where I can set up. This isn't really though the real environment. So if I press this button here, then this is actually where I'm sitting. So I'm sitting next to my piano and here there's a wall with a green screen on it. And because it's a green screen I can set it up to be replaced by anything like, for example, a spinning galaxy. So now I have a spinning galaxy behind, but usually I have various different backgrounds representing whatever it is I'm playing at the time. So then I can go to here, and I also have up here, up on the top there, there's an overhead camera, which I can look here and see the overhead camera. And so now people can look at my hands while I play the piano. I also use this setup for teaching, so I have an additional camera as well that I can point at music, and I can zoom in on here and show the piano full screen. All sorts of things that you can do with OBS. In addition, I can add things on top. For example, while I'm live streaming, my wife kindly looks after the chat, and so I have a little avatar of her that shows the chat, and occasionally it's someone's birthday, so I can press a button and show a happy birthday, and it'll have a little happy birthday sound effect at the same time. All these things are quite simple to do in OBS Studio, and the idea of this course is to just get you started, and we go right from the start, from installing it to laying it out and doing some very basic things in OBS. But in the end, at the end of the course, you should be able to do something very similar to this. And I'm going to hold your hand along the way, and we're going to take our time, work our way through it. And if you've got no knowledge whatsoever, then this is perfect for you, because we're going to go right from the start and get you into, so you can do something very similar to this all on your own. So come along with me and let's get started in OBS. Far as this tutorial is concerned. So here we have a very large black screen, and this canvas up here represents what you're going to finally broadcast or record. So everything that happens in this screen here is what your viewer, and for now we'll just assume that your viewer is either someone on a live stream or someone viewing your video after it's been recorded. OBS doesn't care. It just outputs to either a file or out to a stream, out to the internet. It doesn't care. All that matters is that this little video, or this little window here, represents your output video. So we've got a few panels that are all around the screen. So this is our output, and this is what your viewer is actually going to see live. Then we've got down here, we've got scenes, and we're going to go through each of these two boxes quite heavily during the course of this tutorial. But scenes are essentially exactly what they say. So if you're imagining watching a television program, then there'll be one scene in this particular room, and then you move to a different room and there'll be another scene in that room. Well, this is exactly the same. You set up all the things, or the screen how you want it to be, viewing what you want with so many cameras or so many audio sources, however you want it all set up. You have it all set up in here, and then if you want a completely different look or a different layout, then you move to a different scene. We'll discuss scenes a bit more as we get there. We've then got sources, and in here this is everything. This is pictures, this is videos, this is webcams, this is microphones, this is anything you possibly want. Effects, overlays, all sorts of different things that you can do to build up a scene. So you get a set of sources which are then used within a scene. From there we've then got an audio mixer, and we can have all sorts of audio inputs. For example, you might add a video as a source, and that video itself might well have some audio behind it. It might have some music, or it might have a backing soundtrack. Either way, you then end up with a mixer, and you can slide these up and down to see how loud your output will be for that particular source. We've then got a set of transitions, which we'll come on to. That's how we move from one scene to another. And then we've got some buttons here which are fairly clear. You start streaming, start recording. Studio mode we'll come on to much later. And we've got some settings, and then we can close OBS down here. There's a whole collection of menus at the top here as well, some of which we'll need, but mostly will operate just within this screen. Talking about this screen, this is the default layout, but I personally like to change this a little bit. So if I click these two little boxes here on the scenes, I can click that and scenes will detach. And now I can drag this around anywhere on the screen and leave it where I want. And what I like to do is just gently move it over here to the side and until that box appears, and then it'll appear in the scenes here. I'm going to do the same thing with the audio mixer. I'll click the little boxes and then drag this up next to here until I get this lovely little box appear somewhere here. Where are you? There you go. And now we've got my scenes, I've got my audio mixer in a sort of vertical view, and then we've got some sources down here. And this layout is better for me. This is how I work. Again, I can drag things around and move things about if I so desire. But the important thing is that I like to have my scenes up here so I can clearly see which scene I'm in. I can quickly see my audio levels, and then I can see my output. These are the three things that matter, really. Down here, the sources. Once you've set up a particular scene, then the sources are kind of fixed, and although you can turn some on and turn some off, we don't really need that as much when we're actually live. So I know I've done a quick whistle stop tour, but we're going to go into all these panels in a little bit more detail as we progress through the course. The only thing I want to cover extra in this particular video is I'm just going to go to settings. Now the settings can be a little bit scary because there's an awful lot of boxes to choose from, and there's most of the boxes we won't even use because the defaults, the ones they come set up with, are absolutely fine as far as I'm concerned. One thing I do want to do though is go to video, and I want to have a look at these two resolutions here. Now the top one is currently set in 1080p, so 1920 by 1080, and that is how many pixels are on your canvas, which is your screen that you're going to be broadcasting. Now there are two settings here, and it's quite important that we know what these two settings are. The first one is how we're going to lay things out, and really I tend to leave, unless you've got a particular reason, I would leave that one at 1080p, or you can go up or down however you want it to be, but that's how you're going to lay things out. So for example, if you're recording and if you've got an HD video camera, then it'll come in at 1080p, and it's nice to just lay it out without having to move it around. The output though may change. For example, if you're streaming to Facebook Live on a personal account, the Facebook only accepts 720p as the largest. So I would then set this to 720p, and what OBS will do is it will take in everything and lay everything out at 1080, and then just as it's about to stream it out from the computer, it will downscale it to 720p, and that will do it for you. You don't need to do any work yourself, so you don't need to change your base canvas to then scale it accordingly. You can let OBS do that for you, and by setting this to the higher resolution all the while, it then means that you don't have to keep changing it for whoever you stream out to. If you then were to stream to YouTube or Twitch, you would then perhaps say that you want to go back up to 1080. Oh, I missed, clicked a bit quick there. 1080, and then that'll work straight away. You can only change these settings while you are not streaming. As soon as you click that start streaming button, it becomes locked because obviously OBS is then trying to do the work for you. Anyway, I don't want to confuse things. I just want to set this or show you these two settings. You can obviously leave it as alone as much as you like, but I just mentioned it here because something like Facebook Live, which we'll have a look at later, does require that it's in 720 for a personal account. Audio has a very similar thing in that you might want to choose a different sample rate should you so desire, change it to 48 hertz or kilohertz, sorry. But for now I'm going to leave this set on 44.1 and click OK. Okay, that's a brief overview of OBS. I recommend you just have a little go at dragging your boxes around, moving them around, clicking the little buttons, and then moving them around, seeing how you like it laid out. You won't really know what works best for you at the moment because you haven't got any scenes and you haven't started working with it. But this is the layout that I find is the smoothest for me. Okay, in the next video we'll look at creating our first scene. So here we are in our first scene. At the moment our viewer can't see anything. This screen is entirely black and that's what they're going to be seeing. So what I want to do is add something to that scene, and we're going to use the simplest thing I can possibly imagine, which is a simple image. So I'm going to go down to the bottom of sources, where I've got sources down here, wherever you've got that laid out on your screen, but I've got the sources box here. There's a little plus button to add a new source. So I'm going to click the plus, and then I'm going to get this lovely list of all possible things that I can add to this scene. And I can add to any scene, and I can add as many of these as I want to make the scene as complicated as I like. But for now we're just going to pick image, and we're going to add image, and we need to give it a name, and I'm going to give it a name blue, which will become obvious in a moment, and press return. And then I'm going to select my image, and here's the one I've called background blue, and click open, and eventually there we go, I should get my image. Now there's an important checkbox underneath this image, which is unload image when not showing. If we imagine later on that you've got lots and lots of scenes, all with lots and lots of images or webcams or other cameras, microphones, videos, all sorts of complicated things, then OBS has to take up system resources in order to render those and look after them and present them to your viewer. Now if you've got lots and lots of different scenes, you might flick between different scenes, and for a while there might be a source like this image on a scene that you are not currently showing. So what you can do is you can tick this box, and then what will happen is when OBS goes away from this scene, it will unload that image from memory so that it doesn't take up system resources. This might seem like a really sensible thing to do for everything, but what I would advise is leaving this unchecked unless you find that the system is really starting to sort of creak at the edges, if you like, and really suffer. The reason being is that when you switch to a scene which has lots of sources with this checkbox checked, it has to go and load them there and then. And for a small image that might happen imperceptibly, but if you've got a webcam that you're not showing and then you want to suddenly show, for example, then that will take a split second for OBS to go and spin up that webcam and start receiving images from it again, in which case you'll find that your viewer will get a momentary black screen while OBS is loading it up. So what I would say is leave this unchecked for all your sources, unless you really are a heavy user and you start to find that OBS is really struggling. And we can discuss that later when it comes to streaming and recording. But for now, this is all I need for an image source. I can click OK, and I've now got my image, and here it is. So now I have a source which I've called blue, and it's here on the screen, and if I click this, it then highlights it with a red border, and I can literally grab it and drag it around wherever I like on the screen, and I can just move it anywhere and leave it where it is. I can also turn it off by clicking the little I button, and it'll go away, and I'm returned back to a black screen again. And then I can click the I again and it'll come back. And then the last most important thing is this little padlock icon. If I click that, the border goes away, and now I can't accidentally or on purpose move this around. I can get my selection box, but I can't move this around. It's really useful. As soon as you're happy with where your source, a visual source, is on the screen, I highly recommend then clicking the padlock, because it's surprising. If you just accidentally move your mouse over here and you're aiming for something else and you click and do it, there's nothing worse than accidentally dragging your entire background down here or somewhere where you then need to go and get it again. So use the padlock and it will lock it wherever it is. So then we've got all sorts of ways we can move this around. We can move it around with our mouse, or if it's highlighted and selected, I can move my cursor keys. I'm pressing left cursor, I'm holding down left cursor, and it's moving it slowly. Really handy to be able to move it in short amounts. Yep. So we can do that. Or I can then grab this little box. If you're familiar with any software, then you're probably familiar with the idea of bounding boxes. And I can just move this little box all the way around like this, and I can keep on stretching it and moving it around. And I'm gradually making it smaller so that I can eventually go like this and eventually get it small enough that it will just fit inside my screen, like that. And now I've got a box there. This is quite a large resolution image, which is why it took up quite a lot of space on the screen, but if it's a smaller image it would just come in at whatever the resolution of that image is, and you can drag it around. OBS doesn't care, you can put it where you like, leave it where it is, half off the screen, half on the screen, doesn't care. It'll just send out to your viewer whatever is in this canvas size, in this black box here. There are a few shortcuts. If I click on my blue source here and right click, if I right click I can then go to transform, and then down the bottom of transform, because we're transforming its size or shape, I can say fit to screen, and it's now made the red box fit the screen. If I then move the red box around again and put it down here, say, I can then do the same thing, right click, transform, and I can center to screen. And if I do that, it will take whatever the size it is at the moment and then put it in the middle of the screen. I can then move it around randomly again, right click once again, transform, and I can center vertically, so it'll center it this way. And no prizes for guessing. If I then go transform and center horizontally, it will center it horizontally. And that's marvellous, and then I can move that around and do what I like. You will, however, notice if I go transform, so right click, transform, and fit to screen, then it's the red box, its bounding box if you like, is now fitted to the screen, but or now fits the screen I should say, to use the language correctly, but the image is of a different aspect ratio, so it is left this black box on the either side. So what we need to do is, if I go right click again, transform, and edit transform, I now get the box where I can change everything with numbers instead of dragging things around, and we'll notice that the bounding box type, so the red outside box, is scale to inner bounds. This means that it will fit the image entirely within the box, so it'll always make sure the image is entirely shown but inside the box. What I want to do is scale to outer bounds, and now it's filling the red box with whatever the making sure the image fills the red box no matter what hangs over the edge. So if I scale this down again, you can see that the red box, however I show this, is always going to fill with the image, so there'll be nothing left of inside the red box, but the image itself will be scaled accordingly. So this is sort of what we want it to be when we want to fill it for a background image like this. Now there is a little quirk of OBS here. If I go back to here and right click, transform, and fit to screen again, unfortunately what OBS does is it then goes and clears out the transform option, so I have to go to edit transform again and scale to outer bounds. There's a few little quirks of OBS that you get used to, and that's one of them. Do remember that OBS is entirely free, and it's open source, and it's written by the community, so it's created by community members. So the fact that you're getting it entirely for free is a marvellous thing, and the odd little quirk here and there are far outweighed by the fact that it's a marvellous piece of software that does what it's after well. So we're now happy with this, and I could click the lock button and that will lock that in place. What I'm then going to do is I'm going to get another image, and I'll grab this and I'll go image again. So I've gone plus sign image, and this one I'm going to call purple, and I'm going to go OK like this, and I'm going to go to the same place, and I'm going to get my purple image and click OK, we'll open, and then go OK. Notice how this image is a much lower resolution than the one before, so it has come in at whatever resolution it was. And again, I can do exactly the same things as we did before, and I can drag this around, and I can enlarge it and shrink it, do all the things that I could do before with the previous image. But one thing that's very important, and the reason I've grabbed this image in, is that this image has been created on top of the image before. So I've got purple on top of blue, and this is very important, the layout of your the sort of the order of your images. If you've used anything like Photoshop before, or any sort of paint product where you're using layers, you'll know that the top layer is the one that you see first, then the next layer, then the next layer, then the next layer, and they lay on top of each other. So this works exactly the same way. So at the moment purple is on top of blue, so we see purple. However, at the bottom here there are some up and down arrows, And if I've got purple highlighted and I click down, it will go behind blue. You can still see how it's laid out, but it's now your viewer can't see the purple image because the blue one is in the way. And likewise, I could do the same thing. I could put it back up and it will now be in front of blue, so your viewer will see the purple image. We can make it more obvious, but if I unlock blue and shrink it slightly like this, and then I can see that my purple image is in front of the blue image. If I take my purple image and move it down, it will go behind the blue image, and then now blue image is in front of purple. You get the idea. I'm labouring the point really. There are some shortcuts. So if there were multiple images here or multiple sources, this works exactly the same for videos, for webcams, which we'll see later on. If I right click blue and go to order, I can move to bottom, and what this will do is it will take that wherever it is in the stack and it will move it right to the bottom of the sources. At the moment there are only two, so it's just going to swap it over backwards and forwards. But if you imagine there was a whole stack of images here, this will just send it right to the bottom. I can do the same thing. I can then go order and move to top. So hopefully this is a brief introduction to images as sources, and we can see all the important parts of a source, certainly a visual source. Anyway, all these things that we're doing with these images, we can do exactly the same thing with videos, with webcams, which we'll show shortly, or anything, and it's always going to work in the same way. So now let's try a similar thing, but let's try it with a webcam. Okay, so this is where we left it last time. Now let's add in a webcam. I can only apologise that you then have to look at my face cam. Hopefully that doesn't put you off the rest of the course. What I'm going to do first though is I'm going to clear up this scene because we don't need these images at the moment. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go to blue and I'm going to right click and I'm going to go remove. Alternatively, I can click the minus button here on the same thing, or I can press the backspace button on my keyboard. Are you sure you wish to remove blue? Yes. And I'll then go purple and I'll say, are you sure you wish to move purple? Yes. On one minor note, when it comes to multiple scenes, I'll talk about this later, but once I've added a source, that source is then available to add to multiple scenes. So sometimes you might find that if you add an image to another scene, when you then go to add it to a next scene, it's already there. But we'll come across that as time goes on. So we've got an empty scene again. This time we're going to click our plus button and I'm going to go, there's nothing here that says webcam or camera, but there is a video capture device. And so that's what we're going to do. We're going to go video capture device and I'm going to name it webcam. And then I'm going to click enter, and then here I'm going to pick my webcam, and at the moment I have very few to choose from, and the one I'm going to choose is the FaceTime HD camera, and there I am. Isn't that exciting? So sorry, this is me. Hello, I'll wave at the webcam. Hello, my name's Simon. So here's the webcam, not at all disconcerting. I can change the resolution at this point, and it should pick up whatever the default is for whichever webcam you like. For now I'm happy to use this. You shouldn't need to use buffering unless you've got quite a complicated setup and you're trying to drag information from a long distance essentially. But we're just going to click OK, and there's my webcam. At that point I can now treat this exactly the same as I did the images. I can move it around, I can drag it around, doesn't really care. You can notice that I'm sitting in front of a green screen which hasn't been ironed very well, and there's bits of the green screen missing off the corner here. That doesn't matter, we'll deal with that when it comes to filters later on. But for now this is my webcam, and I can treat this exactly the same as I would anything else. I'm going to make myself small, and a lot of streaming setups have this down the bottom here. But I can do exactly the same as before. I can right click, go to transform, and I can fit to screen, and it'll fit to screen, and it will fit quite nicely. Because it's the same aspect ratio as the canvas, 1080p, but I can also move the box around like before, and at the moment it's fitting to the interior extents, and I can go right click, transform, edit transform, and I can scale to outer bounds, and then we can use the box as we did before. But for now, let's go back to transform and fit to screen, and then I'm going to shrink it down over here like this, like we did before, and then put it there, like a little camera. So that's a video, and I can have as many video sources as I have webcams. So in the example I showed in the introduction, I also have an overhead camera for the piano, so people can see my keys, and so they can see me if that's what they want to look at while I'm playing the piano, as well as the keys on top. So simple as that. That's then a video source, and you can treat it exactly the same way. I can turn it off, I can turn it back on again, and I can lock it, and then I can't fiddle with it at all, and that's how it's going to be laid out. Simple as that. Nice and easy. Yep. So that's a nice easy webcam. So now let's move on to audio. Okay, now let's have a little talk about audio sources. All the time that I've been demonstrating in OBS so far, you'll have noticed there's been a little mixer going up and down here, showing that we've got a mic auxiliary audio source happening magically. Now there's the audio mixer is a kind of a collection of both audio sources that you have chosen, as well as the built-in audio sources that are set in settings. So I've left this sitting here because this is how OBS automatically sets up. But what I'm just going to briefly do is go into settings, because this can be a bit confusing. So this is broadcasting to your listener, or your viewer. They're currently seeing a black screen, but they will be hearing anything that's visible in this audio mixer. So I'm going to go to settings, and in settings under audio there's some built-in devices, and you can see that built-in microphone on my MacBook is already selected. I tend to find this a little bit awkward because I like to choose my scenes and show or select my audio per scene. So I might have a scene where I can, if I've got something that happens, I need to momentarily sort of hide myself from the stream. I've got a scene which says be right back, and I don't want any audio sources on that scene because I don't want people to be able to hear what I'm saying. I don't want any mics being live. So what I tend to do is turn all of these off. So I'm going to set this to disabled and then click OK, and now there is no audio being broadcast whatsoever. There's nothing in the audio mixer, and this means that I can then select my audio on a scene by scene basis. These settings tend to be used for, they're global if you like. So if you make this mic live with my built-in microphone like this, then imagine thinking of that as a live mic for the whole time that you're streaming or recording. You have less control. What I'm going to do is I'm going to disable that as I did before, and I've got nothing now, so we've got no vision and nothing in your ears either. So then we're going to go down to sources, and I'm going to click my add button again, same place, and we're going to go with audio input capture. And I'm going to select that. I'm going to call this laptop mic and hit return, and then I get the same selection of things that I've got attached to the laptop, and I'm going to select the built-in microphone again and click OK. So all I've really done is exactly the same thing that was there before, but now this is unique or currently occupied on this scene. So that means I have a bit more control over what's happening with this audio source now. It has exactly the same things as before. It's a bit weird because it has a you can see it or not see it, which doesn't sort of takes a minute for your mind to get used to the idea of you're hiding or showing an audio source, but it works in the same way. So if you can't see it, then your viewer won't hear it either because it's gone from the audio mixer. So you're kind of turning that source off, if you like, really. But then I can see it again, and then they can hear it. That's if that makes any sense. These faders, if you like, or this fader shows on the meter how loud that source is, and I can do all the things you'd possibly imagine if you imagine a mixer. I can slide it down, and then this level is down here. Generally, for audio levels, you want to try and pitch most things so that they're sort of around here, around the 10 mark. Just very occasionally peaking in the red, only very occasionally. People who are watching your stream or listening to the recording can always turn their volume up themselves on their device, rather than having a distorted sound if it goes too much into the red. Digital distortion is not a very nice sound, so to be avoided if at all possible. You can also mute an audio source by clicking the little symbol there, and it then mutes it. Very similar to turning it off, but it does mean it's still there and you can mute it on and off. And later we'll see that there'll be keyboard shortcuts that you can create to turn particular sources on and off, or mute them and unmute them. And so that's where it becomes more useful. It's kind of a live. This makes more sense to me. Rather than hiding an audio source like this, muting it makes a lot more sense when I'm thinking about audio. That's just me. But that's an audio source. I can have multiple audio sources, so I can do the same thing as I did with the visual. I can go add, I can go input capture, and I'm going to call this a Zoom H5. If I can type correctly, there's H5. And I can then go from my selections, and I've got, via a USB connection, I've got a Zoom H5 connected. I can click OK, and now I've got my H5 in exactly the same way. And you can see that the levels are slightly different, so this would be a good example of where I could try and match the two levels to make sure that the two sources were coming out reasonably comfortably for my listener, so that they're sort of going to match. As you can see, the H5 is actually a bit low really for broadcast, because it needs to be up somewhere up here to be more comfortable, so people don't have to turn their volume up too much. But apart from that, this works in exactly the same way as the things you can see in the sort of video in the canvas side. The only difference is the order doesn't matter so much, or at all. There's no priority given to the fact that the H5 is on top of the laptop mic here. I could move it up and down, but it doesn't make any difference to how the sound's going to be transmitted to your listener. They're going to go in exactly the same way. Okay, so that's audio. Now let's try a video source. Okay, let's add a video source. And they work in exactly the same way as any other source that we've had so far. The only slight difference is that we can loop video sources, and also they come with their own audio. So let's give it a go. So we'll go plus sign down on sources again, and you'll notice there's nothing that says video. There's video capture device, but for videos we need a media source. So we'll select media source, and I'm going to call this traffic for a reason which will become obvious in a second. And here we've got a few more options. The Mac options and the Windows options are ever so slightly different, but essentially they're the same idea. We're going to pick from a local file, and I'm going to go browse, and I'm going to select my traffic stock footage that I've got here and click open. Now, depending on how OBS is feeling at the time, you may or may not get a preview here of the video. Don't worry, it's got it. It's just you just have to trust that it's there. Next is we've got a few options that we can choose from. The first is a fairly obvious one, which is loop. So if I click loop, then when it gets to the end of the video, it's literally going to start it without dropping a frame right back to the start again. So you can imagine if there's a background video where you've got like a some sort of textured background that's moving, then when it gets to the end you don't want that to just stop, you want that to start again, and as hopefully there's been a nice loop which all goes seamlessly in the background, and your viewer will be unaware that there's anything happened. However, if you've got you might want to run, particularly say you've created an advert that you want to run, then you'd only want that to run once and then not play again, so then you'd leave loop unchecked. For now I'm going to leave loop running because I want the video to keep running over and over again while we're talking about it. The next thing is restart playback when source becomes active. So this means that when I select this source, either I use the little eye to show it, or I switch to a scene with this source in it. If this is ticked, it will go to the start of the video as soon as you show it, and then run from there, and then it might loop as well. But if I'm, say, halfway through the video and then I switch to a different scene, or I turn this source off, then come back to this scene or turn the source back on again, then the video will start right back at the start of the video. If I untick this, then wherever you leave the video, it will then keep running essentially from that point. And then show nothing when playback ends is important, otherwise you'll get the last frame of the video going all the while. And then here we have our close file when inactive checkbox again, which we had when we had images. Same thing, if you tick this, then it will take slightly longer to load and get started. So I would leave this unchecked for now. There's a speed option if you want to run the media source or the video quicker or slower than you require. On Windows, on some, depending on your system really, there may well be use hardware acceleration when available. I would check that every single time, because if you've got a GPU that can handle it, then so be it, that would be great. And then I'm going to click OK. And then magically my video has now appeared. It was there all the time. This slightly jerky motion is actually the video itself, not my particular laptop. This then works in exactly the same way as a video, as an image. So I can right click and I can go transform and I can go fit to screen, and it will fit that video to screen. It's just some stock footage of some traffic somewhere in England by the looks of things. But I can work in exactly the same way as before. Might be a slight delay as I move things around, because it's now OBS is having to move a video around rather than an image, but I can do exactly what I did before. I can scale it, I can move it around, I can move it up and down, I can have an image in front of it, I can have another video. But one important thing about videos is that they have an audio component. So when I added the video, it automatically added in a new audio item called traffic, which is the name of the video that I called it. And I can do exactly the same thing as I did previously, and I can try and line that up so the audio, it doesn't go over the top of my speaking. If I was broadcasting this traffic, I'd want this traffic to be underneath my speaking voice. So my speaking voice was here and the traffic is underneath. The good news is that you don't hear this. Later on in the course we'll talk briefly about how we can monitor what the sounds are from the video and also from your audio sources, but by default you don't hear anything that your listener is hearing. It all gets sent out via these audio mixers. So here we can see that the video has got this noise. Again, you can just mute that if you like, and then the video doesn't make any noise for your viewer whatsoever. But other than that, the video works in exactly the same way as any other source, and you can deal with it in exactly the same way. You can stack it up behind an image, or you can have it wherever you like. It works in exactly the same way. It's just another source. Simple as that. And lastly, we'll have a look at screen sharing. Okay, so I've cleared the decks, so we're back to our completely fresh first scene, as it's called, and now we're just going to add a screen sharing source. So this works, no prizes now, exactly the same way as all the other sources. I'm just going to go plus, but we do have a couple of options. The simplest is to just capture your display, which we will actually do, but I just wanted to show this other one as well. If I go window capture, for now I'm just going to call it window capture, then it'll bring up a dialog, and now listed everywhere in here is absolutely everything, all the applications I have running. So for example, OBS here is running, so I can capture just a specific window and grab that as a source, but I'm not going to do that. I'm then going to just get rid of this again, so we'll get rid of the source with nothing in it, and this time I'm going to take a display capture. So this is the more common option, which is then to take the display capture, and I'm going to call it my laptop screen, and I'll click OK, and it's automatically picked this display. I do have two displays. I've got another display plugged in, but for now we're just going to keep it on this one, display number 0. Going to show the cursor just because I'm going to leave it on, and there we go. We've got another source which I can treat exactly the same way as anything else. So I can go right click and transform and fit to screen, and then I can lock it, And so now I've got my weird, this is like a weird circus mirror because I'm essentially capturing everything that's on this screen all at the same time. And that gives us a lovely source, and it will literally broadcast that because it's inside the canvas, and it will broadcast that or record that. We could then say, let's go and get a video capture device, and you're going to unfortunately see my face again, so we'll call this Simon Cam, and we will grab the FaceTime camera again. Here I am again, hello. Yep. And we'll pop that in the corner as if we were doing some training video. Let's pop that there, and at the moment that's great. So we've got the screen, and I'll lock my camera in place, the camera, but here in the audio mixer there's absolutely nothing, so nobody can hear anything. So we'll add another source, which will be an input capture, and we'll call this the Zoom H5 again. Go OK, and we'll select the H5 and we'll go OK. I'll check my levels. I'll lock it in place just because I feel like it. Again, doesn't really make any difference because I can't drag it around screen. And this is therefore a really nice little scene which is just for recording desktop tutorials. So I could click my start recording button once I've got that all set up, and then I could minimize OBS, and I can carry on doing everything else I wanted to do, and then when I've finished recording my screen I can bring back OBS and stop recording and then edit my video later on. So this is a nice little scene which will help us set everything up. And so now we've covered all the possible sources that you're going to use on a general basis. There are a few other sources that you can pick in here, one of which we will talk about later, which is actually bringing in a scene itself. There's also text, so I can create some text and put it on screen and move it around. But as far as we're concerned now, that's covered all the sources that we want to cover for now. Next, we'll have a little talk about filters.